Hello and welcome to the live Printing Impressions, Implant Impressions, and Wide Format Impressions webinar, Getting Lean, Implementing a Print MIS for Success, sponsored by Avanti. I'm Patrick Henry, Senior Editor for NAPCO Media's Printing and Packaging Group and the moderator of today's program. Before we get started, let me take a moment to point out the Tips for Attendees widget on your console. That's the blue one with the wrench on it. If you missed the Tech Tips video we played leading up to the webinar, you can always click this widget for more information. If the slides are hard to see, you can enlarge them with the controls on the upper right corner of the slide window. You can also download the slides you'll be seeing today using the green icon with the arrow and the folder, again, on the bottom of your console. Today, we'll be hearing from 4 speakers who can answer all of our questions about putting management information systems to work for printing businesses. Representing our sponsor, Avanti Computer Systems, is Kevin Shaw, Head of Marketing, Product, and Customer Experience. The 3 print company executives on our panel have accomplished exactly what the title of today's webinar describes. Here to share their MIS success stories with us are Mark Phillips, General Manager of AIIM in Ontario, Canada, Jill Townsend, a partner at Square One, Mount Laurel, New Jersey, and Keith Sullivan, CEO, Sol Graphics, Ball Ground, Georgia. After our speakers have introduced themselves, I'm going to ask them a series of questions about how they have implemented MIS at their companies and the benefits that they're seeing as a result. And please remember that at any point during the webcast, you can send us your questions by using the Q&A button in the bar on the bottom of your console. We will reserve the last 15 minutes or so of the program to get to as many of your questions as we possibly can. And Kevin, I now want to turn it over to you, please. Would you give us some background information on Avanti and the MIS solutions that it offers?
Thanks, Pat. Hello, everyone. So first of all, let me thank everyone for attending today. So let's talk a little bit about Avanti. So Avanti is a software and services company to many of North America's best-known commercial, implants, large grand format, direct mail, and marketing print service providers. Due to our in-depth industry knowledge and customer-first implementation methodology, clients look to us as a trusted advisor that can maximize ROI and reduce the total cost of ownership through our leading JDF certified Avanti Slingshot print management software, or MIS. And we're centered here out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and we have staff across North America. We are part of the Ricoh group of companies. We pride ourselves on listening to the market, and our customers help us greatly in building out our roadmap and vision. We have a very active user group, so it's a really tight-knit community that we have of users that are constantly sharing information and insight, and hopefully you'll get some of that insight on today's call. Avanti is constantly innovating. We've been recognized in the industry as a thought leader with many different awards, awards for both feature functionality, but also our integrations to hardware and software. Before we get into our panel, I thought it might be helpful for the audience to understand what MIS is, or how Avanti looks at MIS. So MIS stands for Management Information Software, and the best way to think about that is it's a single source of truth for answers to your important and timely business questions for the operations of your facility. So it's central to your business and production workflows. Through the MIS, it empowers both automation and insight. Avanti takes a very open approach to our MIS, and we have numerous partnerships and integrations to important tools and software that you may have in your shop or that you may look at from a best-of-breed perspective. And this open approach to MIS really allows our customers to build the best solution for their business.
Well, Kevin, thank you very much for that introduction. Now let's have our printer panelists tell us something about themselves and their companies. Mark, would you please begin by familiarizing us with AIIM?
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon, everyone. So AIM, as we refer to it, stands for Avant Imaging and Integrated Media. And just as the name or the stands the acronym, we see ourselves more as than just a print organization. I mean, that is our roots. That's where we started. But today, we believe that we're delivering technology and solutions to our clients. And one of the things that we've invested heavily in through the years is technology. But what we needed to do was to make sure that we understood how this technology was being used in our plants, whether it was being used in the best effort as far as efficiencies and obviously driving profit. We offer a full gamut of services from digital to grand format, fulfillment and warehousing, as well as inkjet technology, but we also offer electronic solutions. So we needed a system that monitor how good the system was performing and how good the business was performing.
Well, Mark, thanks very much. Jill, now let's please hear from you about Square One.
Hi, this is Jill Townsend with Square One, and pictured here is my brother and partner, Drew Townsend. We opened our doors in 1993 and have been in business and growing for 27 years. Square One is a national marketing logistics company serving direct mail agencies and corporate America. We strive to deliver increased response rates for business-to-consumer and business-to-business campaigns through secured data management, targeted messaging, technology, and multi-touch programs. We have a one-stop technical and production capability that we feel provides a stress-free service provider for our clients with reduced program costs and rapid delivery to market. Currently, we have 35,000 square feet facility outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and offer traditional offset printing, digital printing, inkjet printing, envelope manufacturing and printing, as well as complete data and technology services to complete our mail production offerings. We have continually grown in the 27 years by investing in technology, and we value making sure that our investments are put to good use and work, that we can continue our level of growth for more years.
Jill, that was great. Now, Keith, it is your turn, please, for Sol Graphics.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, this is Keith Sullivan, owner and CEO of Sol Graphics. We've been in business since 1988. Started off, as most printing companies do, as a small family-owned business and have grown through the ranks. As customers' needs arise, we've added more equipment, but more importantly, we also stayed ahead of the game by adding technology when we saw the need to make that better for our production and quality for our customers. As we grew, we understood that we needed some kind of management system to be able to put in place. So when we started getting into direct mail and wide format and digital printing and pretty much every other aspect of the printing and graphics world, it became harder and harder to micromanage everything. So we needed to come into a place where we had a system to put it all together. And here we are today, grown to about 50,000 square feet and offering pretty much the gamut of everything that the customers are needing.
Well, thank you for that, Keith. And that brings us to the reason why we're all here today. I want to begin our exploration of MIS by asking each of you a simple question. Why did you do it? Mark, let's please start with you. Why did AIIM decide to start looking for a solution? Give us a brief overview of the problems or the opportunities that you saw.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. One of the challenges we found as we grew over the years, we're in 100,000 square feet with an additional 20,000 square feet off-site warehouse, and the logistics of managing both buildings for just in time or to keep the production flow running smoothly was a challenge. And also as we added new equipment and automated each and every area of our business, whether it's offset printing with new capabilities on those presses or in even the inkjet or digital, we still had that missing connection to bring everything back together to run the business as a business. For years, I mean, I've been in this business for over 25 years, but printers were always seen as, special, and they had, they were good at what they did, but maybe not so good at running business. As we became more lean and as times became lean and margins came down, we needed to be smart. We needed to manufacture lean, much like many other industries have been forced to, and we found that an MIS system was going to be that last key component to tie all the technology we had invested in over the years together.
I see. And Jill, what about Square One? What were your goals and objectives for MIS at your company?
Our goals were, pretty basic. We were spending entirely too much time creating estimates, and they were just numbers on a page. They weren't connected to any real way of knowing if we were awarded a job, was it going to be profitable, or what was the value add percentage. We were quoting just about everything to try and win anything that came across our door. At the time, we had 3 estimators that produced about 8 quotes per day, and our percentage for win conversion averaged around 18%. And the projects we were winning, without knowing the actual cost or any cohesive way to track labor or material usage once it became live or it was completed. We have very little consistency in our estimate process. Each estimator had their own way, which yielded different price results different times. There was a lot of redundancy and repeat effort every time a quote or an RFQ came in. More effort was required from opening up new jobs. At the time, we averaged about 227 job entries per month. And although we did have the ability to copy estimates into a job order, the information within them was just numbers and typed words on a page communicating instructions to the manufacturing floor and department managers. There was no connectivity of timing the materials and the information for the live jobs that were actually going through our warehouse floor. We always valued data and tracking productivity results. We did this manually. But as we continued to grow and the project counts each month grew, that way of getting the informed decisions that we valued and relied on so much was no longer an option and was taxing our resources. Our challenge was to evolve just from creating an estimate to win work to effectively creating a production plan that allowed us to make better decisions about potential new work and the ability to predict consistent profitability with the least amount of effort.
Those are very compelling reasons, Jill. Thanks so much for that. Keith, what did you set out to achieve with MIS Sol Graphics?
Well, we actually had an MIS system implemented way before we got into Avanti, and due to some information that wasn't in the system or things, their ability or modules that it didn't have, found ourselves having to do a lot of legwork. Most of the time, it was pretty much what everybody else does, is called chasing the job ticket. If something was changed, it wasn't real time, we would have to go find that job ticket somewhere on the production floor, bring it back in, make up the corrections, print out a new job ticket, and then get that job ticket back out to the production floor wherever it needed to be. It involved a lot of time-consuming efforts from both our customer service, estimators, management, owners, even the salespeople in some cases, where we were focusing so much on trying to get the job through the company, we didn't have time to really focus on getting more jobs into the company. So we needed to know that we could find a solution out there that would automate a lot of the different steps and keep us from having to stop doing double duty work, and be able to make us more advantageous to be able to bring in more jobs and not worry about losing a job or a customer over the fact that we didn't get the job out on time or was done incorrectly. This was our decision mainly, but the focus that we had was to grow the business, and we needed a partnership to be able to find that, and we knew that having some kind of system, an MIS system in place, would be able to hit all the buttons that we needed pushed.
Yeah, another strong case for a robust and capable MIS. Let's talk for a moment, though, about the bigger picture of production that MIS fits into, and I want to address this to Mark, if I may. Mark, how did implementing an end-to-end automated production workflow with the help of MIS give AIIM a more competitive advantage?
One of the key advantages we felt, and we've seen time and time again, is our sales force is better informed. Many times we had a lot of back and forth between our sales force and production trying to find out where a job was to get the customer the information they required. Now, by putting in this MIS system, our sales staff have been able to get that information from out on the field. Whether they're sitting in front of that customer or they're going to call on that customer, they're able to dial into that database and get not only access to the jobs that are in the plant at that time, but also past jobs. So we found that kind of communication really showed a customer that we valued their relationship with them, and obviously the shorter turnaround time for quotes was just a byproduct of that as well.
Let's do this. Let's try a before and after comparison, life without a robust MIS versus life with one. And I think I'm going to ask everyone to answer this, but Jill, let me start with you, please. What did the workflow at Square One look like prior to implementing a fully fledged MIS?
Well, it was laborious. It took a lot of effort. We did have an aging MIS system that was never really intended for an operation like ours. We ran 3 shifts a day, 5 to 7 days a week, depending on production volume. The scheduling module that it did have wouldn't model any schedule if it ran over a 24-hour period. The module just would stop. We have, a wide gamut of, press runs from small digital jobs to in the millions. We had to export some information into macros and spreadsheets. Some of this information had to be manually keyed in, and that was by each piece of equipment every day, multiple times a day, because as, client request comes in and live work and accommodating schedule to our clients, this was a multiple time a day task for our scheduling department. Our primary scope of work was mailing and was never really intended to be used for mailing services. We made it work. I mean, it was, basically one system that we had to utilize, but it was very challenging because the system just wasn't configured to interpret, mail productivity and different devices. It was browser-based, but with very little upgrades or production improvements, maybe 1 or 2 system upgrades a year. Purchasing of materials was by individual project, and good old-fashioned notification to the purchasing department by, copies of the job tickets, ad hoc, just communicating, and or emails. Our project managers, again, there was a lot of redundancy of keying in information, just special requests, exceptional notations for each project or client need. Shipping, basic level of shipping information. There was a limit on shipping destinations. We do a large amount of distributions. These distributions could range from 10 different locations to over 1,000. And this was all done manually and outside of our MIS system. So this was time-consuming, not only on the project manager's department, but our shipping department, and flawed by nature of the redundancy in the manual entry of someone in shipping. Invoicing was just a dollar value. We had no way to tell if we accomplished the project on budget or if the scope of work had changed during the life cycle of the job and the invoice value should change. This required us to run manual reports and review timesheets. Productivity reports, again, we valued data, and we had our team members on each of the operators on our floor fill out daily timesheets with job numbers that they worked on with start and stop times. And then we had an office assistant who entered in the sheets on a day-to-day basis for all the pieces of equipment and employees. Leadership reporting came down to manually tracking down, number of estimates, sales orders, and invoice values, and reconciled them against labor hours each month in each project. Entering that information into not just another spreadsheet and evaluating it against our P&L, which was in a different accounting program that wouldn't link up with our MIS. So it was very challenged, and although we valued the data and we had ways of getting it, it was just entirely too laborious and took too much time to make those informed decisions. And most of the time, it was after the project had been done, and with no ability to change, the prospects of being profitable as the job was live.
It sounds as though transformative would be the word for what happened at Square One after implementing the MIS solution you have now. Keith, what can you give us a before and after capsule at Sol Graphics, similar to what Jill has just described?
Sure. We faced many of the same ill effects that she did as well. The previous MIS system came outdated very quickly, and it got to the point where we pretty much just lost trust in the system at all. We found ourselves double dutying a lot of rekeying, and ended up having to actually hire a full-time employee to help offset some of that extra work on retyping and getting it ready for invoicing, to go in and double checking estimates. We even did some estimates just to be safe, double check the system was still accurate by longhand. Excel became our friend in most cases where it came to estimating and scheduling of jobs. And there was no real feedback for us to be able to tell where the job was in production. So it was what we always referred to it was a hot mess.
And Mark, what was the night and day difference like at AIIM, please?
Yeah, it's interesting that the challenges we had were much like what Jill and Keith are describing. And I know when we first started off, I mean, our businesses, the three of us today on the panel, are all around from the early 90s or start of the 90s, and printers do what they do well, and that's printing. But as far as running a business, that was the challenge. So beforehand, we had a number of systems that we believed were tracking the information, but as over the course of the years, those systems, although the data was there, it wasn't being used to manage the business any longer. And the key point that I wanted to make to anybody who would ask me back then was, if they asked me where I was right now at that time, what my inventory values were, what my production schedules were like, what my value adds are, or even how much profit I made today, I couldn't tell them because I didn't have one system to tie it all the way back to the G&L. So that was then. Today we have a handle that we run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I can get that information across to whoever I need to get to, whatever time of the day. It's available through the browser. And I think the biggest advantage we saw was when it came to year end, when we had to, we're an audited company, and when we have to get the numbers to the auditors, we can now do it within a day as opposed to a week trying to gather up all the information.
Continuing on the theme of data and reports and business intelligence, Keith, I think you can give us some insight into kinds of business intelligence that an MIS provides. I believe Sol Graphics is growing. How is the MIS helping your company and your team manage that growth?
Number one is the dashboard. That was something that was an eye-opener that helped us when we got into Avanti, where we could control what widgets we wanted to see on the dashboard as soon as we opened Avanti. We could see where estimates, the win-loss ratio versus where we are for the month in sales, but each salesperson are estimated to sell for the month, where the jobs were, how many were on time, how many were on late. It was just like a finger on the pulse of the company. And for someone that's a control freak to look at a screen and be able to find pretty much all the information you want to know about what's going on in your company was vital. That's where I start my day. I click on that and look at that before we go asking questions on anybody else. The milestones and the CRM were the other two important factors that was kind of an afterthought after we put in the MIS system, because we just didn't have that system before. With milestones in our production flow, it gave an automation that once it got to a certain point in the company, it would automatically update the status of it by a milestone. So if a customer would call, and we always get that one call, hey, where's my job at? It was a quick pull up on the computer and say, well, it's here, or it's about to go here, or it's shipped, or we had information at our fingertips. which when dealing with customers in the day and age of today, they want the answers now. They don't want to be called back or wait an hour to get the answers. So having the CRM and the milestones gave us all the information about the customer and everything at our fingertips. So when it came for us to shine, it was easy. We had the quick, easy notes right in front of us, and we used them quite often. The biggest thing, and probably with production value, was that with not having to go through the previous MIS system where we were doing extra job ticket, extra changes, extra work, it allowed our customer service to do their job, which was to be the eyes and ears for the salespeople inside the office. So instead of always tracking a job down or trying to figure out what was going on or updating this and that, they had that information at their fingertips, and then when it came to doing quality control, they were able to get out of their desk, go look at the job, and increased our profitability for jobs with less mistakes, and they had them to be able to do more work that they were not able to do because of the older legacy systems. Our company has grown greatly with just the automation alone, and that was something when we first started looking at MIS was, like I said, kind of an afterthought. We knew we needed something to be able to do estimating and job tickets, but what it opened the world to us was so much more that helped us be able to do a lot. The other big thing was we had 2 different storefront systems that we used, and when a job was ordered on the storefront, the customer service would get an email, and then they would have to key in all that information again by hand in the old system. With the system we have now with Avanti, as soon as the job is ordered to the storefront, it automatically creates a job ticket, puts the files and the job ticket to the prep department, puts it in the hot folder, and it's ready to roll before anybody's touched it. So the automation that it's given us has been key for our growth.
Well, I think thanks to the 3 of you, we have a great picture and overview of the benefits. So let's now address due diligence for selecting an MIS solution. Obviously, Avanti is not the only MIS solution out there. I wonder, Mark, if you could please begin by telling us how AIIM evaluated its MIS options. What were some of your principal criteria?
Yeah, when we started to look, we obviously had a legacy system in place by one of the larger companies in North America for sure, and we went back to them as a starting point. And what we found was there were these big MIS systems, but they were almost too big. And then the other flip of the side of the coin would be that there were other, I'll say, systems, not true MIS systems, but systems to run your print shop that were too small for us. We liked the fact that Avanti was relatively starting from scratch with this Slingshot application. We had followed them prior to that with their classic rendition of the software. But when they went and rewrote it for today, we felt very comfortable that they were the right size for us. And we did get support. I mean, we were talking to at that time, the principals of the company. We were able to have communication directly with them, what we would raise as a question. And as our company grew, they grew along with us. And that partnership, I don't believe we would have seen from some of the bigger organizations, or the smaller organizations may not even had that level of support. So we were very comfortable with the size of Avanti at the time.
As Mark quite correctly points out, the solution is important, but it's just as important to consider the merits of the solution provider. Jill, what was Square One looking for in an MIS vendor?
Well, there aren't that many MIS players around that offer the broad scope of requirements that we were looking for. We first took a good look at identifying our needs and wants from an MIS. This meant recognizing where the organizational flaws and inefficiencies were. We found other MIS providers were more interested in showcasing their products, whether or not they were a good fit for us or would actually help us. We were a stop on the sales cycle. They really didn't take a lot of time to understand our operation, our core focus, and to just take an honest look at their product to say, will this, be successful for you? We wanted to select an organization like ourselves that was growing, that valued continuous improvement, and recognized that we consider our clients our partners. Our Avanti reps understood where Square One was going and had solutions for our identified operational goals, and introduced us to all the offerings that the Avanti modules had to offer. We felt that they understood our needs and were a partner in the process of making sure we understand the functionality, and did a great job of explaining how it would improve our current state of operation and get us on track for a logically lean operation. Avanti acknowledged that, from the get-go in our original conversations, we started this process, I think, 2 years prior to us actually moving ahead with it. And we saw their drive for system improvement, and they required their users' input and feedback. We're unaccustomed to an MIS that updates as often as Avanti, but we did recognize that was a sign of the product development and system refinement that occurs on a regular basis with their technology. They open the lines of communication not just through the users group, but through your point of contact with your support team, to voice areas of improvement that are needed, that develop as the different technology comes out for our industry. They really, after the close of the sale, they still take your call, and they're still with you every step of the way. They value and recognize, what that brings to the relationship with their clients, their partners. Our success was their success, and they wanted to make sure that, we were on the right track.
Keith, what are your thoughts along these lines? What are you looking for in a partnership with an MIS solutions provider?
Well, without mentioning the company that we had our previous MIS system with, they had a habit of buying out a lot of other MIS companies and trying to build up, I'm guessing, the most perfect MIS system out there. Unfortunately, they kept on sunsetting or basically killing off a lot of their previous MIS softwares. One included was the one that we had. They stopped doing updates, and they stopped basically having anybody in support. It would take 2 to 3 days if we had an issue. And even in some cases when the system was completely down, we were 2 or 3 days before we'd hear an answer and somebody how to fix it. This is not something she can put up with as a growing company. So we wanted to find someone, no matter how big their name was, that had the ability to support us no matter what. When we first looked at Avanti, we didn't know much about them. Ricoh at that time did not own them, and it was Ricoh who brought them to the table. And the feel and support that they pretty much emanated when they first met with us is much like what our company's environment was. It seemed like a close-knit family company that had not been out in the big business world to try to make as much money. They actually still cared about the companies. They cared so much after we went with them that I even had the direct cell phone number to the CEO at that point of Avanti that I could call at any time with any questions. To this date, and we've been on the system for over 4 years now, we have monthly phone calls with their support team to go over questions and answers and stuff that we or our employee staff have come across. Got a great relationship with their support, and they get back to us with answers immediately. It's not something we're waiting for. That, to me, if you're going to invest in that much money and you want somebody to be a partner with you, you don't want to wait around for them to answer them. You want them to come back to you as soon as possible and help you with the problem. They have been wonderful for us where it came to any issues that we ran across. Now, I'll admit, there's no perfect MIS company out there. There's issues that always are going to come up, but it's how they handle it, I think, that makes the difference. I feel when we made the decision, they were going to be a company that was going to be around for the long haul. They were going to be someone that wasn't going to be calling us the next day offering us a slight discount to upgrade to the next best, greatest thing, that what they were going to give us was something that was going to be what we were going to use from now and forever. When Ricoh ended up owning them or purchasing them, that was just the feather in the hat for us. We run Ricoh equipment. Some of the other softwares we have are Ricoh softwares. That just brought us into the fold of the family is going to be there for us no matter what. I didn't have the finger pointing or anything else that would ever come up. And it's rang true. When we had an issue, Avanti's been there for us, and that to me has been a key asset for us.
The three very strong endorsements. Before we go on here, just a reminder to our audience, I see we have a couple of good, relevant questions in the Q&A box. I would like to see a few more in there, so please don't be shy. Use that Q&A tab and get us your queries. Like any purchase of technology, acquiring an MIS is an investment. And Mark, I wondered if you could tell us what type of return AIIM anticipates. How and when do you expect all of this to pay off?
So the initial investment into Avanti, we were speculating the ROI would be somewhere around 3 to 4 years. We're still on track, and we've actually met that on the initial investment, because what it allowed us to do was to capture gaps or lost revenue that was happening during our day-to-day operation at the time. So between that and also our investments, our investments we've made since the implementation of Slingshot, we've also had to monitor how much throughput, what the costs are, what the value that's bringing to the organization. So we have been on track for the ROI of 3 to 4 years on the initial investment. And it's allowed us to also step the investment as far as adding modules as we grow. We initially purchased around 12 modules for the size of our business, but we're able to add on as our business changes and as Avanti brings new things to the marketplace.
We don't want to forget about what happens after the sale is closed and the software is up and running. And I'm going to leave this an open question. Anyone can take it. And Kevin, our Avanti representative, you can feel free to comment on this if you wish to. But how important is post-installation support to getting what you want from that new MIS? I'm not going to point at anybody. I'm just going to wait for someone to chime in here.
Sure, this is Kevin. Maybe I'll just start and give our panelists a bit of a breather, but thanks.
Sure.
So I think one thing that we've learned, our teams work on a daily basis, is that the MIS isn't a set it and forget it system. So there's effort on both sides. From the Avanti standpoint, we're very active in understanding the workflows, the business, the types of jobs. We work very closely with the customer so we can understand how they work, so we can best position ourselves to support them. For example, with sharing information on improvements to the system or new modules, or even simply just education. So the more we know, the more we can reduce the amount of time it takes to support them. But the MIS is an ongoing and living and breathing piece of software, in the sense that there's constant refinement, not because of Avanti changing things or adding new features, although that can be extremely valuable as we solve market problems. It's really about once you get the system up and running, we see that a phased approach works best. So working on particular workflows, getting certain modules up and running, and then as the organization, the plant starts to work with the system, there are efficiencies and improvements, tweaks to be made to this system. So, often what we find is the initial ROI that we go in with the customer is met sooner than we think, because there's a phased approach to tweaking and improving, and you actually start to get more benefit out of the system the longer the longer it's in use.
Okay, thank you for that, Kevin. I would like now to ask our printer panelists to sum up of what you've learned from firsthand experience about success with MIS. Keith, would you mind going first? What are the number one takeaways, in your opinion, for our audience today?
Have a plan and a team ready to implement your MIS system. It is not something that is easy to do. It is time-consuming. It is outright a pain. No matter who you have as an MIS system, it is something that we have found if you don't have a good plan and implementing it, it's not going to work. We had to change the culture of our employees to adopt it better, and we had like I said, a team that was responsible for every area, or basically pretty much every module of the system that we purchased. It was something that didn't happen overnight. I believe we were somewhere between 10 to 12 months in the startup to actually go live stage. It is something that we wanted to make sure we got right out of the gate. We learned through the knocks and bruises that we got from the previous MIS system was they came in, did their 3 days of training, left, and then we were just kind of left trying to figure everything out. Avanti was not like that at all. When they came in, even after the sale, they sent us pretty much a couple of outlines of best ways to implement the system. They gave us contacts and phone numbers for any questions to use along the way. They were there multiple times on site and through webinars and so forth, helping us get the training in chunks, not all at once, so that everybody could have time to learn it and then have some time off before they had to learn something else, which made it a lot easier for everybody to get the knowledge they needed to. And the best part was when we actually did go live, we had Avanti reps on the floor with us to help us along the way for that first day we started live with it. As a good vendor or as a good steward to the MIS, we did keep both systems running side by side just to make sure that there wasn't anything that would stand out that wasn't correct or something. But we found very quickly that we were not going to use the old MIS system anymore, that the Avanti was set up correctly, and that we could start off using it day to day without any problems, questions, or worries.
Jill, what are your implementation takeaways? What's the most important thing to bear in mind here? And I'm glad that Keith addressed the time frame. I should have asked about that. Perhaps you can fill us in a little bit about that. Not only what you have to do, but how long it takes to get all of this done.
Implementing a new MIS system, it can take a while. We started by organizing our existing standards for each cost center of the operation. I think this is really key to having a successful and timely implementation that does not drag on. Having this information available allows you to focus on diving into how the software works versus how to make the new software work the way you had previously. Avanti has a great approach to implementation and segments out the training and setup process with benchmarks and timeframes and areas of focus. We've kind of followed that outline internally, designating one MIS champion, and then also identifying leads and delegating individuals that were responsible for each of their module. This was a structured approach. We set aside time on a daily or weekly basis, depending on the individual and the priority of the module that they were learning. The entire process for us, from software being loaded to the go live, was 8 months. The first 3 months was allocated to software training and just general system setup. During this first 3 months, we're simultaneously testing our pricing and time and material validation from what we had available to our documented standards. And the next 3 months was internal training, for each module, making sure that the person responsible for their dedicated module and understood the functionality and got the expected results. We also scheduled regular, company meetings as well as lunch and learn sessions. Recognizing that not every, team member is going to have the same, aptitude to learn something new. It's a challenge for most people when they've done something for so long to ask them to do something new. It can throw, some people into just a very stressful situation. So we tried to give and guide, as much as we could for, 63, just data collection users, and making sure they understood, how the system was going to function and how it not only, was going to change and make their job easier on a day-to-day basis, but how it impacted the next, production stop down the line. And this was one of the things that we were really missing in our other system, that people really had, silo mentality, that I only do this and this is all I do, not understanding that, we are an organization that's, directly connected to a lot of different, components and items for an end goal of, whatever distribution or mailing. We had a hard go-live date, and we stuck to it. We wanted to make sure that, if we waited for 100% of our team members to be all ready and, know what their, know how the new software works, that we would never have everybody on board at once. In our organization, we basically went live because we felt the risk of moving forward, even if everyone wasn't as completely as prepared as they should, was too far of a cost for the operation not to make progress forward.
And Mark, what is your most urgent advice for people who are either embarking upon MIS for the first time or upgrading to a better solution? What should they be thinking about, and how much time they should be budgeting?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that we learned from the implementation was not downplaying the human element. And what I mean by that is our employees were going to either make this successful or not successful. Management and, owners can drive down a solution and say it's the best thing for the business, but unless the employees buy into it and understand why we're doing that and what part they play in it, then you have a split on whether people will accept it or not, and then that will slow down the implementation. In our business particularly, we had the demographics were split between people near retirement and new people coming into the business. So we had a gap, and we identified that as looking at who was keen to learn. And it may not be a manager. It may be somebody that reports to that manager. So if that was the case, we would let the manager know that we were going to take it off his or her plate because they were too busy, but get them the support through whoever was doing it on their part. And once we got the buy-in from all our employees, it went a lot smoother than what we expected. We had also had a hard go-live date, but it took us 14 months. And in hindsight, we look now and think we would have done it in a different, I'll say, sequence. Estimating is always where we would first start because that was the biggest hurdle. But we also had to get buy-in from inventory and purchasing and the different departments that affect that estimate. So, yeah, it took us 14 months and been very happy. But getting your employees to buy into it and understanding that it's not to look over their shoulder, but it's to help them earn a future with an organization that has a future, that's the key thing, I would believe.
Thanks so much for that, Mark. I would like to use the remaining time to get to some audience questions, and it's very interesting. The question I'm about to read here almost anticipated what Mark just told us. It's kind of a 10,000-foot question, but I think it's an important one, and it says, when implementing lean, how have you gone about changing from a job mentality to a flow mentality where process improvement is an overt goal? Keith, I'm gonna kick that one at you. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll throw my hat in the ring on that one. Yeah, not to harp on what we've all said before about legacy systems and so forth. more of the times we were chasing the jobs. We were working for the jobs, getting through production. We were spending way too much time spinning our wheels trying to updates and so forth. Getting to more of a flow scenario is where now we've been able to almost eliminate a physical job ticket in our shop floor and through the data center and the digital department, pre-press, every place. They have computers since it's browser-based. A little tidbit of information that we did that's a great information for the people looking into it. We were able to buy really inexpensive Chromebooks for about $1,000 or $100 a piece. We bought about 10 of them, and we placed them in strategic places around the shop floor and made it easier for our employees to access the computer right there where they were doing the work and put the information in. That was one of the biggest hurdles when we implemented that. We didn't get the information because if they had to stop what they're doing, go find the computer, log in, and do the work, having the laptop right there where they're working with a barcode reader, they were able to scan stuff and off a quick sheet and basically in 2 to 3 seconds complete their role of what information needed to go into the system. Because of all this automation and all the easiness of being able to make this happen, the work was flowing quicker because we didn't have to stop and go ask somebody a question or someone track this person down. It helped make it know that this is where you went to get the information about the job. This is where you put the information on. It's done. And that helped make us a lot quicker when we were doing our work.
Jill, would you mind also speaking about moving from a one-at-a-time job mentality to a flow and process improvement-oriented mentality at square one and how MIS is helping you achieve it?
Yeah, I think, and this has to start from leadership. Lean processes are what most people working on who's a machinist or an operator on a device doesn't really understand the idea of lean. But what we try to communicate to everyone in our operation is that this is how we work smarter and we work less hard. And by investing in this technology, we're making your job easier so you can have the optimal job and potential for success. Somebody who's working on a folder doesn't necessarily want to have, the mentality of a lean operation, but they do want to do a good job, and they want to be as efficient and, produce the best folded piece. And they have to understand that relates to making sure that, we're doing things and giving them the tools and the information and all the best technology that we can possibly have for them to achieve that. I mean, essentially that's, from the ground level up to us, it's our job to make sure they understand why. It's not for the company, to make more money. It's not for, the end goal to get more jobs out. We want everyone to understand lean operations is so everyone can succeed at what they do on an everyday basis with less effort, with less heartache, with less stress.
Nicely said, Jill. Thanks so much. Here's one I think Kevin may want to tackle. We're being asked, what's a typical minimum size of an operation to benefit from or see return on investment from an MIS? I guess another way to answer this question would be, is it possible to be too small to benefit from MIS, or is size just not an issue?
Sure. Yeah, I can take that. So in our case, we're very strategic in the size of shop or the markets that we serve. So as I mentioned, the system works very well in commercial printing and marketing service providers, implants, direct mail or print mail shops, and large and grand format dedicated shops. But I think the simplest way to put it, just for the sake of time, is the more complex your business is, the higher the ROI is going to be. It's not to say that if you're a dedicated shop and let's say a direct mail or letter shop or large grand format that you wouldn't see an ROI, but that's certainly one of the benefits. So the larger the volume, the more complex the, in many respects, the bigger the demand or the quicker turnaround, then you'll benefit from the automation and the information that MIS has. So we usually see that that's a shop size, and it's just a gauge. 3 to 5 million in sales US annually. It's kind of a number that we've seen just from a market sizing perspective. But we do have shops that are smaller as well. So it really is a case by case basis, depending on what that leadership group wants to get, or what information that leadership team wants to get, and how they want to run their business. But it does vary.
Again, here's another very relevant one. Do these companies employ an MIS/IT manager, or do they outsource this function? Mark, do you have your MIS IT management entirely in-house? My guess is that you do, but please tell us.
Yeah, Pat. So we're running the application with Avanti in the cloud. So from an IT perspective, I don't have anybody that's managing that for me on a day-to-day basis. But what we have learned is we do have a Avanti administrator sitting in this plant whose sole function is to keep us up to date and relevant, and to analyze how we do things. And I want to go back to a question that was asked earlier about what you do when you bring in a system. Business also has to make concessions, and I'll just speak very quickly about that. In my digital department, I have 2 operators running 8 pieces of equipment. So for them to start and stop the data collection the moment the machine runs out of paper or the job finishes, that's not always possible, because I'm asking them to run multiple pieces of equipment. My offsite side of the business, obviously, we're running a press which has a pressman and a feeder, and they're running 1,000 sheets or 1,000,000 sheets. Much easier to get them to start and stop a job. So the business made the decision consciously to say, the digital department, as long as I get the numbers for the day or the shift, I'm not too concerned about how long it took to run a job if they're running 7 jobs concurrently. And you do have to make those concessions sometimes to fit your organization. If it's one function, one operation, one operator, that's pretty easy to track. So getting back to that administrator keeps us up to date, because as staff turns over, as new functions come up, or as we look at how we're doing something, and we're always trying to do continuous improvement, that's the goal of that person sitting in that seat as the administrator, to keep us current, because to Kevin's point earlier, it's a constantly evolving, it's a live being inside our plant, and it's almost the heartbeat of our plant. We need to keep it up to date, and we need to keep using it properly.
Jill and Keith, we have just enough time for each of you to say how you're handling your MIS IT management. Jill, can you just quickly tell us about that?
Yes, we do have an internal IT manager, but we do outsource our higher level engineering work to a firm. This is something we do house the Avanti software here on our site. We're not cloud-based. I do believe that there's, a role or some responsibilities for a system administrator, but I don't believe that that's, the full-time, a full-time requirement. I mean, truth be told, I manage the system administration with the assistance of my IT manager. And we need outside source. We go to Avanti first. If they can't assist us, we basically outsource whatever that need or requirement is, if it doesn't deal with the software, to an outside IT firm. But for the most part, it's more of handled internally by our IT manager for a day-to-day basis, but not what I would consider a full-time function.
And Keith, how are you managing the function at Sol Graphics, please?
We do have an internal IT department. We also have like third party for the higher up stuff that's, but we also house Avanti in-house, the servers on our premises. We felt it more comfortable to have it there for speed and agility. Can't answer if it really is any faster or slower than having it in the cloud. But for us to have it internally, with some of the stuff and regulations that we have to follow through, our jobs have to have a SSL certificates, and we attach data sheets and so forth for mailing and so forth to the actual job through Avanti, through its documents, and having it in-house kept it behind our firewall and making sure that we were compliant with the levels of stuff that we had to have for securities and so forth. So for us, it was we had to have it in-house. So yes.
Well, that takes us to the top of the hour, actually a little bit past it. We are out of time for today. On behalf of Printing Impressions, In-Plant Impressions, Wide Format Impressions, and Avanti, I want to thank our great speakers. I learned a lot about this subject that I did not know. I also want to thank you, our audience, for your attention and your engagement. Good questions this afternoon. Final request, please be sure to check out our webinar pages at each of the publication websites to get information on all of our archived and upcoming webinars. And this webinar, by the way, will be archived, available on those websites within a day or two. Finally, if you would just take out a minute to fill the brief feedback survey that's going to appear on your screen next, we would be grateful. Your feedback does help us improve the webinars that we will bring to you in the future. Again, thanks so much for being with us. We hope to see you again soon at upcoming Impressions Group webinars, and have a great rest of your day.